Today's topic is the influence of sound on evolution. There is a beautiful fable about this in the scripture. I will open the topic by giving you the little narrative that is given in the scripture. There was a conference of a group of devas who are presiding over the five senses, the mind and the five pulsations called the five pranas, and finally also the deva who presides over the respiration. They gathered and discussed as to who is most important among all these fellows, and everyone argued that he was foremost. The power of sight argued that because he was there, the living beings are able to live, and similarly the deva of hearing said that he was very important for living beings to live. Similarly, the deva of smell, then the deva of taste, and the deva of touch, then the deva of mind. Then finally it was decided that one of these fellows should make themselves absent from the human constitution for 1 year. The deva should go on pilgrimage and return to the human constitution after 1 year, and then we can decide who is of foremost importance. Then they asked the deva of eyesight to go on pilgrimage. He said, "It is good. These fellows will understand my importance when I am not here." He went on pilgrimage for 1 year and returned back, and he met the other fellows for the first time and questioned them. "Sava?" They said, "Trebhya." "How could you live?" he asked. They said, "Just as the blind man is living." The blind man who is born blind, they live lifelong without the eyesight. So we, all the other devas, are helping the fellow to fill the gap. So it is proved that you can be easily substituted. Therefore, you shut up and sit down at a place. Then they asked the power to hear to go on pilgrimage. Then he returned after 1 year and saw that everything was going on normally. Then the others replied that they were happily living just as the born deaf fellow lives. And like this, everyone was sent out on pilgrimage for 1 year, and all the others were living happily. They did not ask one deva to go out on pilgrimage. And finally that fellow waited and waited if he would be asked to go away. They were very intelligent and they never asked him to go on pilgrimage. Then the fellow smiled and asked them, "Shall I go on pilgrimage for 1 year?" They never replied. He said, "I am going on pilgrimage." And he was about to leave the constitution, and they were all suffocated and they prayed him not to leave. And he was the deva who presides over respiration. They never allowed him to go out. So it is decided in their seminar that the deva of respiration comes first. They asked him, how you are so very important. He said, it is because of my guru, my master. They asked him, who is your guru? He said, my guru's name is pulsation. You know, respiration depends upon pulsation. In Sanskrit, pulsation is called prana. And the word pranayama means regulation of the pulsations of the constitution. Unfortunately, some people try to control respiration instead of pulsations. And due to pulsation, respiration continues. As long as respiration continues, mind can make its manifestation. As long as mind can make its manifestation, the five senses can make their manifestation. And one of them requires sound. And what is the importance of sound in evolution is the present question. We have a double mechanism for sound in our constitution. Do you know what the double mechanism is? It is the telephone. You have two discs in the telephone, one to speak and one to listen. So we have a telephone mechanism in us. The one disc is in the vocal cord. The second is in the drum of the ears. And the sound we speak through the vocal cords, and the sound we listen through the drums of the ear is called vocal sound, which can also be called voice. But there are other forms of sound different from voice. For example, noise. What is the difference between voice and noise? Sound with consciousness is voice, and sound cut off of its consciousness is noise. So all the mechanical sounds we hear are noises. When they are made regular, they are musical. When they are made irregular, they are non-musical. So we have vocal sound and also noise, and we have musical sound, non-musical sound. All these sounds are produced only through one principle, that is called friction. Let it be the friction of the vocal cords or the friction of some other instrument. And this is only one form of sound. When sound is produced through friction, it is only a sound vibration and not the original sound. Here we should understand that all the sounds we listen through the ear, whether produced by vocal cords or by a mechanical process, they are only vibrations, that is the effect of sound and not sound at all. That is what the ancient scriptures say. And also the ancient Sanskrit books on the science of music say. They say sound is of two types. All these items put together is one type, which can be called the sound effect and not sound. That is sound vibration and not sound. And there is the original sound quite different from the sound vibration. If at all the evolution is affected by any sound, it should be by the original sound and not by the sound we produce and hear. We should be able to understand a little bit about this original sound, which can be called the sound principle, which is different from the sound vibration. And what is the relationship between the sound we hear and the original sound? To make it clear, the ancients called the original sound the pool of sound. That is, they compared it with a lake of sound. What does the pool or lake contain? It contains water. Just as a pool contains still water, space contains still sound. And whenever there is a disturbance, there is a wave on the surface of water in a pool. Similarly, whenever there is a friction of either the vocal cords or any mechanical device, there is the disturbance of the pool of sound in space. And then there is what is called the wave of sound produced. And that is what we call the sound vibration. Just as the wave in the lake is not the water in the lake, the sound is not the vibration. Just as the wave cannot exist without water, the sound effect cannot be produced without the original sound. But our five senses and the mind can receive only the sound vibration or sound wave, and they are not having the capacity of having an experience of the sound pool. Now, since we know the sound vibration very well in the noisy cities of the earth planet, and since we know what voice is and noise is, because we cannot keep quiet for a long time, we go on speaking something. See how I am speaking for 2 hours every evening, and as if it is not enough, I am speaking even in the afternoons in the houses, and even it is not enough, in the mornings I am speaking to people who come to me. And in addition to that, by way of cooking and eating, I do much noise through my vocal cord. And if I produce this much of noise in a foreign place with foreign friends, you can imagine how much noise I do in my native place with my own people. So, Every one of us, at least some of us, do much noise in this world. See, and it is very easy to produce noise or voice, and it is very difficult not to produce. Therefore, we need not speak this evening anything of the A type of sound. What we want to know this evening is about the pool of sound, of which we are not so much familiar. Maybe some of you might have made a special study of the scripture, and that branch of books of ancient India which contain the keyboard of sound, color, number and shape. Books of very deep scientific nature, revealing quite clearly all the intricacies of the inner layers of these 5 principles. At the same time, unfortunately, the most misunderstood of the world literature and most misused by the Occidents during the past 3 decades, and much misunderstood as books of beastly yoga, that is, yoga of sex. The books are called in Sanskrit tantras, which fools and idiots comment in many ways, according to their own nasty levels of existence. For example, beasts of sex have written many books about these sacred books. They described these books as books of yoga of sex. And there are people who are experimenting with yoga of sex and going into the activity of their lower organs and living more and more in the lower worlds than in the 5 senses and the mind. I am only very sorry for these translations that are made for the Occidentals. But these books contain the advanced sciences of the sound principle, etc. And also the very sacred and pure methods of using the 5 senses for realization and salvation. Those are the books which give us the real keys of sound and sound. Now we try to understand a little bit of the real sound principle. There is a conversation about speaking about the importance of sound and sound principle. The A and the B aspects of sound which we have discussed. The conversation goes as follows. The Guru asks the student, suppose there is no sun, how do you see each other? The answer is, when there is moon, we see. Suppose there is no moon also. The answer is, we see through the light of the stars. And when there is no light of the stars, when there are clouds, then the answer is, we have our own light. Again there is a question, when there is a nuclear war and when the power fails in the whole globe, how can you find each other? Then the answer is, we shout and find each other. We can also find the position of each other by shouting, and we can know also whether the person is before us or behind us, or towards the right or towards the left. So they say the use of sound is more important than the use of light, and that the ear can be used even in the absence of light, and this gives us an idea of the importance of sound. And sound is described as two types in Sanskrit. One is ahata and the other is anahata. Ahata means through friction, and anahata means sound of no friction. All the A type of sound is ahata sound, or sound by friction, and the original of that sound, that is the pool of sound, is called sound of no friction. This sound is said to vibrate in a medium which the Theosophists and the modern spiritualists call ether, and which the ancient scriptures call akasha. The ancient scriptures define akasha as the content of space. That is precisely the definition given to akasha. And it is also described that akasha exists in two different states. One is sleep state and the other is awakened state. This is because space exists in units of space, described as eggs of space, and each egg of space is alternating between the two states. For some time it is dormant or sleeping. For some time means for some millions and millions of years of our earth time. And then for some time it begins to wake up. And when sleeping, there is only space and no akasha in it. When awakened, it is filled with akasha, and then there is what is called space mind in it. As long as there is space mind, it is described as the brilliant egg of space, and when it stops, it is called the egg shell of space, because the chick of the egg is taken away. Do you know what the chick of the egg contains? It is a little bird, just as you see in the egg, whose parts of body contain particles of light that expand into the thousands and thousands of galaxies, each of which becomes a solar system of its own day. And all this process of becoming a solar system is called utterance, and it is utterance through sound, and it is not at all the A type of sound because there were no vocal cords at that time, or there are no two articles to make a fiction. There was no objectivity at all existing. Unless there is objectivity, there cannot be the existence of either two persons or two articles. There are no 2 points separately existing in the whole egg. That is why the whole thing is existing as only one being. Just as when you are sleeping, you represent only one unit because you have no mind and no objectivity. You have only your respiration and your heartbeat and your digestion while you are sleeping. There is nothing that can be called other than yourself. That's why the whole thing is described as one living being and compared with a bird. And when the whole thing begins to expand into a space globe, the process is called utterance. This utterance is through sound, but not the vocal sound or the audible sound. So now we should be able to recognize the existence of a sound that is uttered, yet a sound that has no audibility or friction. We are forced to accept the existence of sound that is not audible. We cannot disbelieve it because sounds that are not audible to the human ear are audible to other animals like dogs. There are some birds which listen to sounds that are not heard by human fellows. What we call sound with our instrument of audibility is only a range of sound vibration having the septenary principle. That's why it is said sound is having 7 musical scales, and they have their duplicate 7 musical scales on the level of the A type of sound, whereas the 7 originally exist in the B type of sound, and still it has its original, the C type of septenary of sound, and there is finally the 4th called the 4 stages of utterance of sound. Let us try to understand a little bit more definitely. Our vocal sound has 7 musical scales which can be studied and understood by these books of ancient science of music. This sound can be called vocal sound, and if we want to utter this sound, we should first utter it mentally. Otherwise, you cannot utter it vocally if you do not utter it mentally. And in between, there is what is called your language. For example, French to the Frenchman, English to the Englishman, etc. So, you will utter your vocal sounds in your mental language. Suppose I say, this is a book. The sentence is vocal, mental and English. So, first we utter vocal, mental, language sentence. Before that, we can utter mental language sentence which has no vocal aspect. That is, unless I mentally utter, this is a book, I cannot utter vocally that this is a book. So, every vocal expression has its mental language expression. Before that, there is another sentence. Once again, I repeat. Before I utter, this is a book, I should utter mentally the same sentence, this is a book. Before I utter that sentence, I should utter it in a sentence of no language. That is a pure concept sentence. That is the third sentence. And only after I utter the third sentence, I can utter the English sentence or language sentence in my mind. And only I have uttered the second sentence, I can utter the third sentence, that is vocal, mental, language sentence. So, we have to accept the utterance of 3 sentences for every sentence we utter out vocally. And before that, there is another sentence, that is what is called the utterer hyphen utterance.